Greetings. Greetings. Our languages in their greetings and gratitude carry the gentle reminders of our humanity. Sawubona is the Zulu greeting, which means I see you. I see you, those who you walk with, who are alive and dead. I acknowledge you, your humanity. If ever we should be blinded by the scorching injustices, we must remember and be awakened by the call to really see each other. Zulu means the heaven and the weathers. Black people daring to call themselves Zulu, the heavens and the weathers, is a disruption to the missionaries of the anti-Black racist world. Sawubona, sisaphila, diyaphila. We answer to the call of being seen and seeing. We are alive, we are breathing as the violent death strips us of our dignity. We utter that today, in this hour, in this minute, breathing is the most mundane and revolutionary act of our time. As the violent deaths meditate on our beings, in our greetings, we meditate on being alive and surviving yet another dawn of day. Our languages are a way of thinking, seeing, and being, and may we thrive and soar in knowing this. Remember this as the English language colonizes the fullness and the landscape of our mother tongue. In Setswana, we heed the greetings call with the word pula. Pula. Let it pour with rain. Pula. Let the waters nourish and quench your thirst in this fight of these injustices. We are not divorced from nature. Ours is a marriage forged in our mother's womb. Ours is a marriage forged in our mother's tongues. Pula is our currency to the water wars we found ourselves in these times. Our greetings carry prophecies of what has mattered to our souls before our births. When we were once questioned if we even had souls, our greetings are prophecies of what has mattered to our souls forever in time. When we were once questioned even if we had souls. In Sesotho, they say, Kiteng, meaning I am here and we are here. Dumelang, Kiteng, I am here and we are here. Whatever violent, evil force that tried to remove us from this earth failed today, failed at this moment, failed at this hour, failed at this minute, because we are here today. The forces of our ancestors have brought us here today. Kiteng. So we gather here today to listen the voices of Prof Nelson, Aya, Zandi, Mbali, and Mutumelo, and we call them by their names as they pour their truths to us. Pula, let it rain, let it nourish us, let us grow and heal, let the words nourish us. In Sesotho, they say Kgomotso in greetings. Peace is what we seek. Kgomotso means peace. It is the peace that we seek within ourselves in this world that is not for us. It is the peace that we seek and we imagine for ourselves as we imagine a world anew. We seek to piece our humanity together. Kiteng, Pula, we are here, Sanbonani.
Thank you, Sister Ngezwa Mbele, for that moving and movement supporting offering to open the event and to bring us into a shared space of greeting, of calling, of relationality, radicality, rebellion, reflection, history, now, future, and more. Ongezwa, thank you so much. Ongezwa is a poet, a storyteller, a theatre maker, a lecturer, and a researcher at the University of KwaZulu-Natal, whose dialogical and performance-based exchanges act to simultaneously and generatively invite and provoke and unsettle, much as this engagement on combative decoloniality and the Blackhouse paradigm is likely to do, I imagine. Colleagues, comrades, and friends, greetings. A very warm welcome to you all as we connect virtually, and I see across time zones and geographies as well. My name is Shana Safla. I am affiliated with the University of South Africa's Institute for Social and Health Sciences, which with support from the Office of the Vice Principal of Research, Postgraduate Studies and Innovation, Professor Thenjiwe Meyiwa, and the Executive Dean of the College of Human Sciences, Professor Kgomotso Masemola, is the host of this virtual event. We are delighted to have as many of you join us this evening, certainly this evening in Cape Town. Today's event, announced as a public lecture, is in fact the very enactment of collaboration and horizontal dialogues, equally of convergence and complementarity, of decolonial encounters and praxis, rooted very much in multiple inspirations, in multiple struggles and joys and love, and inspired by methodologies of coming together. Being familiar with the work being undertaken by all the comrades whom you will hear talk today, and very much in resonance with the work of the Institute for Social and Health Sciences and its community partners, in this moment, I'm taken back to a poem by the legendary South African poet and ardent Black consciousness activist, Omaruddin Don Matera, who, as many of you will know, sadly passed away yesterday. In the poem titled A Zanyan Love Song, and very apt given the theme of today's talks, Don Matera proclaims, "Somewhere in a dark sanctuary, I hear the sound of a freedom song." With this, I'd like to introduce all our speakers, and I'll do this at once, all in one go. I'll start with Professor Nelson Maldonado-Torres, who is currently visiting and has been gracious enough to participate in a number of events hosted by the Institute for Social and Health Sciences. Nelson specializes in transdisciplinary decolonial thought, race theory, and the work of Frantz Fanon, as many of you know. He is affiliated with the Rutgers University in the USA, is Professor Extraordinarius in the Institute for Social and Health Sciences at UNISA, also an honorary professor at the University of KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa, co-chair of the Frans Fanon Foundation, and works on a program on Black consciousness and decoloniality with the Blackhouse Collective in South Africa, with whom this event is taking place collaboratively. Zandi Radebe is also one of the speakers this evening. Is a Pan-Africanist and Black consciousness activist and the founding member and leader of the Blackhouse Collective, a Black consciousness Pan-Africanist educational program based in Soweto, South Africa. She is also a decolonial scholar who teaches political sciences at the University of South Africa. Zandi holds a master's degree from the university currently known as Rhodes, and her research interest collectively focuses on Black radical thought, action, and movements. Mbali Khame is an emerging activist scholar who is dedicated to working on the ground with a very specific focus on the Black condition and an engagement in reimagining the Afro-decolonial narrative. She has done this as a cultural journalist, as a creative writer, an early childhood program teacher and facilitator. Mbali holds a Master of Arts in Creative Writing from the university currently known as Rhodes University, and is also a member of the Blackhouse Collective. I'll add two more introductions. Ayabulela Mahlalo is a double master's scholar at Wits University and University of Cape Town, and her work is primarily concerned with mythic structures, experimental methods of abstraction, structural deconstruction, and conceptual innovation. Aya is also a member of the Blackhouse Collective and has been centrally involved in activist, student, and community movements. And finally, Butumelo Khame, who is all of 18 years old, has joined us this evening as well. She's an activist at the Blackhouse Collective. She's currently in her first year of university studies at the University of Cape Town, majoring in politics and philosophy. So it's really, really a pleasure to be in community with collaborators, supporters of the Institute's work, and comrades. Welcome again to you. I should add at this point that our speakers are particularly looking forward to interacting with you, the audience. So please feel free to drop your comments and your questions into the Q&A function on the Zoom platform, and we will turn to these later. Please also note, and I guess you would have seen this already, that the event is being recorded. With that, Zandi, over to you, my sister.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much, Anas. Just sort myself out over here. I hope I'm audible.
You are.
Right. Allow me to quickly share my screen so that we can begin. Greetings, everyone. It gives me great pleasure to be invited to share with you all the work of the Blackhouse Collective that we've been doing for the past, I think, 8 years now. And I'm also equally privileged to be sharing the space with my interlocutors and my comrades, Professor Nelson Maldonado-Torres, Sister Ayabulela Mhlahlo, Mbali Khame, and our youngest comrade, Ayabulela Mhlahlo. I mean, Dogozo Buitumelo. Dogozo has two names. I mean, the advantage of being an African, she's got two names. One is in Sesotho, one is isiZulu. So she uses either one at any given moment. So when I say Ntokozo Kgame, I'm referring to Boitumelo Kgame. Is my presentation viewable?
Yes, yes, Sandy, it's clear, and we will manage it from our end. Yeah.
Okay. All right then. No, we can begin.
Sorry, Sandy. Sorry
Should
to
I
interrupt. Can you stop
mine?
sharing? Yes,
Not a
please.
problem.
Thank you.
Okay. Ready when you are, comrades.
Almost there, Sandy. And
not a problem at all.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for your patience.
You can start us off with the spoken word item on that first slide.
A deadly disease has scorched us. The condemned chained. Traditions wiped out. Native language substituted. Scared and ill, the little spirit left. I shout combat. Fear still holds us down. My undying spirit shall go on in combat. I look at what has come of us. Shame clouds me. However, I fear not, as Fanon said. Shame is a revolutionary sentiment. I smile as I recall his words. It is a work in progress. Fourth industrial revolution, changing world order. I still shout, are you blind? The two compartments of the colonial world are still expanding. The dividing line has grown thicker. A world without spaciousness. Men live on top of the other. A hungry town, starved of bread, starved of meat, starved of life, and starved of light. The new world order emerging, the condemned chained, still on our knees. The children of Azania are torn in two parts. Double consciousness outweighs us. A friendly reminder, a call for action in combat. We shout. No matter how well the black subject has mastered the culture and language of whiteness, her body remains black. Aluta continua to Farnon's decolonial spirit of combativity. Aluta continua to the unfinished project of decolonization. Sparks ignited, truth unraveled, mist of darkness now faded. Such a timeless gift bestowed upon us. Aluta continua. The struggle against colonialism still continues. 21st century, digital era, westernization, Western culture is our colonizer, media the deliverer. I write what I like. I am Duduzile Nonkosi Matonzi, 22 years of age. I am a member of the Blackhouse Collective in Soweto. Thank you. Aluta continua. Aluta continua to Farnon's spirit of combativity. Aluta continua to the spirit of decoloniality. The struggle continues.
Aluta continua indeed. That was Duduzile Nonkosi Matonzi, a member of the Blackhouse, who started us off with a very powerful spoken word piece that introduced the main theme of the event titled Combative Decoloniality, which was organized by the Frantz Fanon Foundation in the 60th anniversary of Frantz Fanon, as well as the commemoration, or rather the celebration of his classic decolonial text, The Wretched of the Earth. The Frantz Fanon Foundation invited various organizations to commemorate and honor and send tributes to Frantz Fanon for his 60th anniversary, and that was the offering, or rather the collaboration that the Blackhouse Collective offered. For organizations like the Frantz Fanon and the Blackhouse Collective, decolonial thought is not decolonial if it is not also combative. Combativity, however, is not easy to pursue or sustain within modern colonial institutions such as academia, where we find increasing references to decoloniality today. The propagation of decolonial thought in some circles and networks of the academy in the last decades represents a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it can offer more opportunities for new generations to learn about or do research and contribute to the unfinished struggle for decolonization, while on the other hand, it risks creating and normalizing a non-combative version of decoloniality that makes decoloniality collapse into a teaching and research theme within the hegemonic liberal paradigm of knowledge production in the academy. The modern colonial and liberal paradigm of knowledge simultaneously rejects the incorporation of ideas of combative relevance to the academy, while preparing the ground for the means translation, domestication, eradication, and effective deactivation of the combative dimension of any such idea that makes it to the table of academic debate. There are at least 3 modes of operation, or rather 3 key aspects of coloniality of knowledge that are readily observable, that is central in the globalized modern research university and its contemporary neoliberalized formations. These include, firstly, the rejection of decoloniality and related themes such as Black consciousness, which represent a challenge to the neoliberal conceptualization of the modern nation state and the world order. This rejection often occurs through the sanctioning and the misappropriation of concepts such as excellence, diversity, reason, rigor, and science. When these two becomes difficult to sustain, then there is the second aspect, which is the incorporation or the incorporation of carefully selected ideas and concepts that acknowledge the existence of inequality and its effects within the academy, but do so in a way that continues to protect the neoliberal academy from questions or challenges that exceed its limits. These includes giving credence to discourses of diversity and inclusion, often at the expense of the marginalized, and the deliberate mistranslation of more challenging terms or concepts such as Black power, which keep decoloniality and other such concepts such as Black Lives Matter at bay. The third mode of operation becomes obvious when, due to the pressures exerted by social and student movements, ideas like decoloniality and Black consciousness start to have some presence in the academy, in spite of the established fields, disciplines, and administration of the university. In this context, the dominant attitudes and practices of the colonial university in the function. Can I start over? In this context, the dominant attitudes and practices of coloniality in the university function as a safety net of sorts, making it appear as though combativity is either exhausted or accomplished through mere intellectual debates alone. In this context, concepts such as decoloniality can start to have some recognition and value within the academy, but only to the extent that the vital connections and effective relations with the grassroots organization, movements, and communities that promote decoloniality are increasingly erased. Fanon offered a different model, a combative one, according to which knowledge creation and critique are grounded on a decolonial turn, wherein the subjects and communities relinquish the desire to assimilate to the modern colonial ideals and turn to each other in the process of creating new relations amongst themselves and birthing new concepts that reflect those relations and the possibilities they offer. In his words, Fanon reminds us that open quote. The collective struggle presupposes a collective responsibility from the rank and file and a collegial responsibility at the top. Yes, everyone must be involved in the struggle for the sake of the common salvation. There are no clean hands, no innocent bystanders. We are all in the process of dirtying our hands in the quagmire of our soil and the terrifying void of our minds. Any bystander is a coward or a traitor, close quote. For Fanon, combativity is first and foremost a matter of collective responsibility in the face of the catastrophe of modernity, coloniality, which implies the formation of collective and the mobilization of the collectives against the forces of coloniality and towards the creation of other worlds. The formation of collectives among Blacks and racialized subjects is no less than an extraordinary affair, as in order to do this, they have to overcome or at least start to leave behind the expected Negrophobia or Afrophobia in our context, and the desire to appear as human on the basis of the established order or criteria provided by the modern colonial world. In this reflection, we collectively attempt to reflect on the combative work and the possibilities that characterize the collaborations between the Blackhouse Collective in occupied Azania and the academic spaces and projects such as the decolonial ethics studies in the Caribbean, in the United States, as well as the Rosemont Fall movement in South Africa. In many ways, we feel that the Rosemont Fall movement in the context of South Africa and the world operated as a catalyst that offered the condition for an encounter and the collaboration between us. Our collaborations have sought to contribute to the challenges of the roads must fall and to the liberal paradigm of knowledge and its disturbing coloniality in academia. In many ways, the Blackhouse initiative was a call to create a space outside white academia, which responds to the needs of Black people located in what we call the zone of dehumanization. The purpose of the project, however ambitious, goes far beyond the consolidation of these spaces, but further hints to the need to collapse the existential assumptions associated with spaces such as Soweto and other townships, while reviving the culture of thinking, Black love, and self-reliance as a major component of the Black liberation struggle. Our focus as the Blackhouse Collective is on education towards social justice, doing so through combativity. We seek to educate and agitate for a free and decolonized society through which the indigenous dispossessed can, in all spheres of their lives, in all spheres of their dispossession, heal from the 400 years of our violent encounter with the savagery of colonial apartheid racism. The Blackhouse Collective was founded in 2004 against the backdrop of dominant colonial epistemologies and political theories that do not center Blackness. Shaped by the lived experiences of its founding members at various points in their lives, BSK was born from our collective encounter with the realities of South Africa and post-1994. Notice that we do not say post-apartheid, but rather post-1994. Blackhouse became our political home because we had made unpopular decisions about the direction of our young lives. In search of a new system of values capable of providing answers to the Black experience post-1994, we sought ways to escape coercion into occupations designed for youth of capitalist societies. Fanon again cautions that Black graduates separated from their communities become easy prey to being coerced or swallowed by the exploitative society in which often we are the direct objects of their exploitation. He continues that this separation further reduces the possibilities of detaching ourselves from the devastating experiences of colonized education. In the following session, I attempt to provide an overview of the genesis of some of the work that went into the creation of the Blackhouse Collective through my own trajectory as a founder and an educator at the Blackhouse Collective. I begin here with my experience as a postgraduate student in a white university, or the university currently known as Rhodes, UCA, and how that led me into exploring Black consciousness ideas and praxis through an initiative I founded known as SYP, or Siapambili Youth Pioneers. I will also invite and allow my sister Maldonado-Torres to expand on her experience of the SYP as one of the learners whom we worked with. My experience as a Black graduate at the university currently known as Rhodes between the years 2006 and 2008 was ironically not too different from what was experienced by the students behind the Rhodes Must Fall and Fees Must Fall movement in 2015 and 2014, as well as the subsequent responses to anti-Black racism and epistemic violence, white supremacy by Black students undergoing the South African experience in higher education. And as a Black graduate and student who also was a tutor, I became acutely aware of Black students who, unprepared, made it to universities that not only taught a westernized curriculum, but were also racist in their culture and outlook. UCA left me with a deep sense of anxiety about the prospects for Black youth in institutions of higher learning. This experience inadvertently radicalized my attitude towards the university and, by extension, the entire project of higher learning in the country. And while most graduates are generally excited about the prospects of employment and securing their dream jobs after completing their studies at the university, I wanted something different. As a young Black graduate who grew up in the township of Soweto, which is also the home to the Black consciousness and Pan-Africanist culture of resistance, I equally became aware of the fact that, and as Mike Steinberg observes, open quote, not a single national program illuminates the cognitive understanding of the violence inherent in racism, close quote. I became aware that there was no single project that catered for the conscientization of Black youth in post-1994 South Africa, despite the fact that the country had just been through a system of apartheid. I therefore sought to address this problem through Siapambili Youth Pioneers, a small organization that I co-founded and ran from my mother's backyard in Mulapo, Soweto. Briefly, the movement was founded in 2009, and it believed that, through African-centered education, we would be able to bring young Black people into a better sense of understanding themselves, but also navigating the limitations of post-1994 South Africa. It is not unusual for township youths to grow up exposed to inferior learning from attending poor schools and from growing up in poor communities. I will then give my sister Maldonado-Torres to take us through the work of Siapambili as someone who had become a recipient of their programs. Maldonado-Torres.
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you for this opportunity to be part of this lecture that aims to lay out the different works that Blackhouse Collective has done over the years and the birth of it, where it comes from and how it leads to be where we are today. Just in terms of mapping my journey with Siapambili, I would like to read a reflective piece that I wrote when I was a 17-year-old learner at Aurora Girls High School in Soweto. Then I was in grade 11 and I was also a SYP mentee. just to give a bit of context, the piece was published by the Siapambili Youth Pioneers publication called Youth on Point, which we launched in 2014. Youth on Point was a publication responding directly, as I see it, to Biko's guides when he says that a lot of attention has to be paid with our history if we as Blacks want to aid each other in our coming together into consciousness. We have to rewrite our history and produce it in the heroes that formed core of our resistance to the white invaders. So Youth on Point consists of different contents that came from the SYP mentees, which we captured our experiences through book reviews, feature articles, interviews that we were doing, and also reflective pieces like one I'm going to read from. The original title of this piece was titled Siapambili Youth Pioneers, My Black Conscious Home. However, in its publication on Youth on Point, it was titled The Children of Biko Speak, an African Princess Discovers Her Black Conscious Through Bantu Biko's Philosophy. I won't be reading the entire piece, but I'll be reading the important part that, you know, demonstrates that through SYP, as a young learner at a township high school, and as someone who lived in the township and experienced Blackness, was the different questions that I was occupied with. And through coming to SYP, I was able to find answers and find realization to why the format of our communities was the way it was. So I'll begin to read. Black consciousness to me means rejecting anything that aims to put me down only because I am Black. I have realized that all this time I was socialized into believing that Blackness was meant to paint, erase something that does not have a sense of belonging. Waking up, knowing the gentle truth taught to us by the Black consciousness movement brought to our school by Siapambili Youth Pioneers has made me claim pride in myself, that I am Black, and by owning my Blackness, I've taken on a journey of power. I embrace my culture, my belief, and have a different outlook in life, an outlook that does not seek to make me feel inferior. This undertaken knowledge has made me realize things that I then thought they were meant to be normal. I'm sitting with questions needing answers. Why does my school not have a library? Why do majority of learners eat from the feeding school at my school? Why does my uncle hate the shoemaker from Malawi who sits around the corner? Why are my dreams of going to university one day accompanied by fear or impossibility, but making beggars at McDonald's seems to be fitting for me? Black consciousness has made me realize that I do not have to surrender to false thinking about myself or my community, that we belong to this world and deserve to be recognized like other races. We need to see ourselves different and our supremacy, love one another and educate each other. Heroes like Bantu Biko, Thomas Sankara, Mangaliso Sobukwe, Marcus Garvey, and the ancient Kemet known as Egyptians who built the pyramids should be honored by living the life they fought for. And that is the end of the excerpt. So this piece was published by Youth on Point, but Youth on Point comes much later in our journey with SYP. It comes as a pillar that was introduced after we've had the reading clubs, the debate clubs, the SYP transformative projects, which included revamping libraries at our schools, and the career buddies pillar, that where we had people who came to us and guided us about the different career paths that we can consider, including Sisandi, who taught us about the academic or intellectual space that we are fortunate enough to be a part of today. So yes, I will end there because I only have 3 minutes. Thank you, Sisandi. Over to you. You're muted.
Thank you so much, Mali, for also jolting my memory about, the work that went through to creating Siyaphambili Youth Pioneers. And it's also refreshing to hear someone who has been, with us from high school and is now a master's graduate and a young academic. And of course, the combative nature of SYP. Are we able to share the presentation, please? The slides. For us, the combative nature of Siyaphambili Youth Pioneers was evident in its infusion of Black consciousness ideas and in its programs, which undeniably was disruptive to the neoliberal and ANC charterist framework that created a false notion or a false consciousness among young people by labeling them as born frees. And of course, Mbali herself is what the ANC liberal framework would label as a born free, but her experience of being a Black learner in a township setting and in a township school seems to reject this notion. So during this period of working with young learners in Siyaphambili, I would also learn with unquestionable intelligibility the continued relevance of Black consciousness as a living philosophy. We began to appreciate the urgent need to revitalize and popularize the teachings of Stephen Bantu Biko and Mangaliso Sobukwe, because to us, Black consciousness and Pan-Africanism are two sides of the revolutionary coin. This was also the same period where I would encounter the politics of Blackwash, a movement which was also founded by young people, and it agitated for the conscientization of Black people, but also it labeled a very penetrating critique to the post-1994 project. In many ways, the Blackwash, rejected 1994 as a liberatory thesis or a liberatory moment for us. In a context where coloniality perpetuates itself through multiple forms of deception and confusion, clarity can become a very powerful weapon. Blackwash, for me, was this weapon. And because it emerged from a context where our Black population seemed to be hypnotized and duped into accepting the 1994 as a moment of, triumph, Black triumph against apartheid racism, Blackwash was able to at least conscientize Black youth to think critically about 1994, but also about their own place in the democratization process, which was founded on reconciliation that excluded the notion of justice. As such, Blackwash represented a generation of Black youth that refused to accept the Mandelarization project that expressed itself through the imposition of ANC culture and politics in post-1994. And to us, ANC culture and politics was embedded in how we were not encouraged to question the status quo. Young people were encouraged to simply, embrace the status quo. In fact, ignore their own suffering as a people and aspire to be incorporated in the Mandelarization project. One of the most powerful ways in which the Blackhouse Collective managed to not only raise awareness, but also to put a very strong mark on the political landscape of South Africa post-94 was how it packaged its politics. What you are looking at now is the tagline or the slogan of the Blackwash movement on your right, and it says 94 changed Fokol. Fokol is, of course, the language used in township settings by young people to mean, to loosely translate that 1994 has changed nothing, or nothing has changed since the advent of 1994. So in offering this critique of the Mandalalization project of 1994, Blackwash represented what decolonial scholar Maldonado-Torres and others have termed a battle of temporalities, whereby, you know, young people are rising to question the status quo, while, you know, older people are fighting against and pushing against such questions, because they obviously want to preserve the status quo. My experience and work with building and organizing in Soweto amongst Black people, and just building spaces around communities that would question and agitate for a decolonized society, led me to also incorporate my own way of building and organizing. And that came through the project that is today known as the Blackhouse Collective. And because I meet Blackwash while also working with Siapambili Youth Pioneers, I seem to have been able to, you know, successfully transition from Blackwash to the Blackhouse Collective. And further in giving birth to the vision of the Blackhouse Collective, I sought to work with others to create a safe and a brave space that is founded on the principles of Black love and the genuine articulation of Black rage, in recognition of our collective efforts to decolonize our lives and those of the entire society. Blackhouse will become a space where Black people, their ideas, their desires and fears are meaningful sites of generating and imagining new positions and decolonial horizons. Just to mention a few projects of the Blackhouse Collective before I invite my colleague and sister Ayabulela Mhlahlo to zone in on one of the projects which contributed, I think, in many ways to the Rhodes Must Fall and the Fees Must Fall students. So the Blackhouse Collective, you can go to the next slide. The Blackhouse Collective involves itself in many programs, but I'm just going to list 5. The first one, which you see displayed on your screen, is a campaign that is titled Justice for Bramaik, and it is primarily around, you know, the Apartheid Museum case and its idea of, you know, what the law or how the law in post-1994 continues to be anti-Black, continues to operate as though we are still in the, you know, apartheid moment. And we also have, the next slide, please, colleagues. And we also have a project which we call the Zondeni Sobukwe Azanian Womanhood Paradigm, whereby we try to write back into the national consciousness the Azanian heroes, particularly women who have been erased in the dominant discourse. Most people would be aware that the Blackhouse Collective was not only fortunate to celebrate and honor Zondeni Sobukwe, an icon, a revolutionary, while she was still alive, but we also managed to get the state to really acknowledge her and, you know, pay tribute to some of the work that she has done. Next slide, please. And we have what we call the Sankofa exhibition. And this exhibition is basically us taking our work, you know, to the most busiest people, where you would find, you know, ordinary people occupied with the day-to-day modalities of anti-Blackness. And we just impose our work into the space, and we encourage Black people to go into conversation with the images without necessarily saying a word. And in this particular one, we were in Bree Street in the taxi rank, and you can see the brother who's carrying a huge recycling bin coming to the exhibition and having a conversation, not only with the work that the Blackhouse Collective is doing, but also with the history that, you know, is being swept under the carpet. I think this next slide is also the Sankofa exhibition. And that is us at the shovel commemoration site, whereby, you know, we are there to commemorate shovel, but people are donning their political regalias and are divided in this commemoration, you know. And so the Blackhouse Collective, through the Sankofa exhibition, managed to, you know, pull everyone together into a central space to sort of say, look, this is where we are as Black people right now. It doesn't serve us to be divided along superficial and political lines. And finally, we have the Philosopher in Soweto series. Oh yes, before that one, we have the Lugotya Lusomanzi Afrocentric Kids Academy, which is a program that is designed to not only conscientize and shape young minds, but also to do that through to reach their parents, because what we also learn from working with the Fees Must Fall, Rose Must Fall movement is that most of the parents do not understand what their children were demanding, let alone what decolonization tend to, you know, what it represented and what it stood to offer for Black people. And some of them rejected, you know, their children's effort to be activists, to be involved in these projects. And so the lesson for us was to find ways that we bring in, you know, parents, especially young parents who have young children, who will at the end of the day, you know, end up in these universities. And so this program speaks to both the younger generation, but also targets parents, because if you want to get through the parents, you have to also go through the child. And finally, and I hope my sister Ayabulela Mhlahlo is ready, we go into what we call the Philosopher series. Can we have the next slide, please? And basically this project is in line with having a conversation with Soweto as a space of non-thought, non-being, where people don't live but merely exist, where we then try to speak against that colonial logic of you know, creating spaces that are occupied by Black bodies, where we infuse Black thought and conversations amongst ourselves as activists and community members, but also amongst those scholars and activists who identify with the work that we do. At this point, I think I would allow Sister Ayabulela Mhlahlo, who's also, you know, a student of this particular project of the Blackhouse.
Thank you, Sister Sandy. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
Apologies, I can't turn my video on because I'm currently load shedded right now. So yeah, it would obviously be dark if I turned it on. But thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to present, and also good evening to everyone here present today. Well, my presentation really, or at least a summation of my experience with the Blackhouse Philosophers in Soweto series is just around, you know, how the philosophies and the symbolic fields locked within those philosophies that were continuously presented in the public lectures hosted by the Blackhouse Collective, inspired and fueled fueled the political action in Fees Must Fall. I'm particularly interested in, you know, my experience of you know, these lectures and how they were important for my own political activism, associated with Blackhouse and associated as well with various Fees Must Fall movements and the core Fees Must Fall movement in itself. So today I just want to briefly speak about what the Blackhouse Philosophers series in Soweto is, and how philosophy, especially philosophy presented by and philosophy produced by scholars who are interested in the community, interested in decolonial praxis, and philosophers who are in tuned with their students, you know, how that type of philosophy, the ethics, you know, ingrained within that philosophy and the principles ingrained within those ethics themselves, you know, fuels political action and enables us to craft a new idea of what the world could be. So the Philosopher in Soweto series, as Sisandi said, is, you know, program or project that is run by Blackhouse that has invited, you know, a good array of really, you know, highly acclaimed philosophers, global and local philosophers such as Professor Gordon, Professor Ramose, Professor Maldonado-Torres, Professor Hartman, and Professor Joy James. And my first encounter with this project was when I was invited to Professor Louis Gordon's public talk in Dobsonville. And there he spoke about, you know, the essence of theory, what theory is meant to do, and why theory is important in our craft and our practice of power, whether it is power in resistance movements or power in government. And I was particularly interested, or for me at least, I was highly dazed by the symbolic fields that were locked into his philosophy, whether he was conscious of it or not, right? The concept of theory as, you know, as sort of deduced from, you know, the theological, symbolics of a god or a variety of deities looking upon the world, whichever world they have crafted, or multiple worlds that they have crafted, and sort of like formulating an understanding or wisdom of that world. And, you know, this is not only prevalent in Western metaphysics or Western theology, it's highly prevalent in Bantu and Nguni mythology as presented by an epic writer such as Mazizi Kunene. And as Sandi, she as it was said in our, you know, biographies, I'm highly interested in mythology and philosophies and experimental philosophy crafted from mythology. So Mazizi Kunene has the same conception in Anthem of the Decades, where a grand array of great, you know, Zulu and Nguni deities are sort of in this assembly in the heavens, Mkhatini, as it would be said, and they are discussing the fate and the destiny and the mischief or the politics of men as they are locked within their own politics. And so, you know, I was, as someone who thinks symbolically, you know, I was really intrigued by that. And I would say my comrades, as well, as we initiated and ignited Fees Must Fall at WITS in 2015, we were locked into Professor Gordon's theatrics, you know, of theory and his theatrics of thought. And when I say theatrics here, I don't mean how he performs thinking. I mean how he elaborates or sort of illustrates ideas and how they dance in our minds and then go on to dance in our spirits and fuel us to act, you know, fuel us to really deconstruct the university and to have a critique of it, a critique that sort of fuels our political activism. And this is not only prevalent, or this was not only prevalent in Professor Gordon's talk, it was prevalent in Professor Oyoronke's talk, Professor Ramose's talk, Professor Maldonado-Torres' talk, you know. It's just this inspiration or this love for philosophy that is, you know, grounded in the love for our people and grounded in the love for justice, you know, that really captured our hearts and kept us going, you know, sort of kept us almost obsessed and addicted with the BHK Philosopher in Soweto series, kept us in tuned with it. It made it not only our political or the source of our political education, but more so importantly, the source of our political imagination. And of course, the Philosopher in Soweto series was not the only initiative, you know, of this nature. I mean, political education was everywhere. It was in the air, you know, whether it was at WITS with Black Thought Symposium or with the new sort of radical political formations around South Africa. In the wake of Blackwash itself, you know, there was a lot of critical political education in our universities as well as in youth communities. And so a combination of all of that and, you know, also ancestral veneration on our part, you know, by that I mean, you know, our own sort of like love, a passion, so to speak, for figures such as ancestral figures such as Biko and Fanon, and now Kgomotso is an ancestor. He wasn't then, but you can just imagine the combination of all of those symbolics and the combination, of all of that sort of ignition, and how it culminates into passion, sort of enables us to engage with the material world and sort of drive our passions towards reconstructing the knowledge that is produced within that material world so that we can imagine a different type of material world. And so the Philosopher in Soweto series was really important, not only for the philosophers who came to sort of discover these, and not discover the communities, but rather to engage with the communities. I'm sure it was really important for them, but it was also important for us as students and as quote unquote audiences, because, the passion and the spirit that sort of roamed in that room possessed us. And in that possession, we began to act, we began to break apart, and we began, to really go upon determining, as Fanon would say, our generational mission. So, that was really our experience, our collective experience with the Philosopher in Soweto series and other initiatives like it. And it's all of these, what I call these quantum implosions, rather these quantum explosions, so to speak, these things that just, it's very small things, but, the culmination of them really, create a phenomena, creates a spirit like these must fall. And that spirit has a ripple effect in time. And, and that ripple effect in time is obviously these initiatives that we have today in our universities to deconstruct knowledge and, really practice decolonial knowledge. Thank you. I hope I was audible, Sissy.
Yes, you were. Thank you so much, Aya
Thank you.
Bulela Mhlatlo. I think your segment will then usher in Professor Maldonado-Torres, because in many ways, and as you said, the Philosopher in Soweto series became a point of convergence between, the people that we identified as our comrades and interlocutors. And of course, in front of us, there is Professor Molefi Asante, who has also visited the Blackhouse Collective Philosopher series in Soweto, Dobsonville. He was joined by our poet, Khafela Wamakhogodi, and Professor Sisandi at the time. Professor Maldonado-Torres, I will now hand over to you and Sister Ntokozo thereafter.
Thank you so much, Sandy. Let me do a quick adjustment here. Thank you so much. And I hope that by now is very clear why it is such a privilege to have been able to participate and collaborate with to participate at the Blackhouse and to collaborate at the Blackhouse with the members of the Blackhouse and with the projects that they and we have been forging since the last several years. I think, as Aya was saying, I think that the Blackhouse has served as a space for these quantum explosions that because they're happening in the community, they are discrete, but not because of that less powerful. And so we have been, I think, joining forces to continue expanding those explosions, and both inside and outside the academy and in different levels. And with regards to youth education, children education, but also varsity education and doctoral research as well. And so, Sandy, before you leave us for a second, I would like you, if you could please say something about the picture that is showing now on the screen, because it will connect also with something that I would say. And I think that what you have to say here is important. If you could join us for a second.
Oh, yes, of course. Thanks, Prof. This is a very special picture to me for many reasons, but mostly because in this particular picture, you see, I think, what we are trying to craft or put together as the combative notion of decoloniality, whereby a couple of us as academics were, you know, we bravely put ourselves out there to open, you know, not only spaces for the students, but also our own homes in terms of the Blackhouse Collective. What is quite interesting about this picture is that you will see that it is taken from the Rhodes Must Fall. This was before the Fees Must Fall, which Ayabulela comes from. It was taken from the Rhodes Must Fall moment, and the comrades had come from across the country to a Africa Day seminar at UNISA, which then led to us meeting at the Blackhouse Collective. And in one of the conversations that we have about, you know, with the comrades was around the actual removal of the statue, which we all witnessed as a big spectacle on television. And the comrades were actually saying to us that they were so unhappy about that moment because how the whole thing moved, you know, from the point where they introduced the idea to remove the statue to where the statue is now being removed. They say that that moment was a moment of defeat for them because the state had, I think, robbed them of the opportunity to craft, you know, the actual removal, but also to create conversation around how they wanted that statue to be removed. And it sort of reminded us of what happened to South Africa in 1994, where some people, well, the vast majority of people were celebrating when Mandela was released out of prison, and yet people like from the Black consciousness and Pan-Africanist movement were not actually celebrating. In fact, they felt that 1994 and the negotiated settlements, the reconciliation did not bring justice, was actually a miscarriage of justice. So I just found that, you know, that those two moments to be very powerful, but also to be, you know, to characterize the nature and politics of South Africa or post-1994. Thanks, Prof.
Thank you so much, Sandy. And I wanted for you to say a little bit about that because I did come to South Africa the first time in January 2014 and a second time in January 2015. And this was for the Decoloniality summer schools at UNISA in Pretoria, meaning this, it was twice before Rhodes Must Fall emerged. And in the Decoloniality summer schools, I lecture about the thought of Frantz Fanon and about decoloniality. But really, I came, and not only me, other colleagues and comrades who came to exchange ideas and to learn, to share ideas from where we're coming from, and also where we're coming from is also part of the large African diaspora, and African thought and African ideas was surely part of that. But we knew that we had much to learn from our African sisters and brothers. So a number of so many years later now, 8 years later, you all see who are listening to this talk, the kind of conversations and learning that has happened. So in my case, I found in the Blackhouse Collective a node, a site of teaching and growth, intellectual and emotional, spiritual, pedagogical, that it has nourished me and benefited me, and also allowed me to grow in the conversation with the comrades. So when I came to lecture about Frantz Fanon and about decoloniality, and these topics, of course, that became central to the discourse, in the discourse of the fallists later in 2015, who were avidly reading Fanon and engaging the university, the South African state, and society with their demands for what they call free and decolonized education later in 2015 and 2016. Now, in addition to feeling close to Rhodes Must Fall because of their combative reading and mobilization of Fanon, and because their attention to the question of decolonization, I also sought to engage seriously with the movement because for the most part of my career, I have taught, done research, and work in units that originated due to student mobilization in the United States. I refer to units such as ethnic studies, which emerged out of student pressures and student strikes in the late in the late 1960s and early 70s. I taught for 7 years from 2003 to 2010 at the University of California, Berkeley, which was one of these sites. And I always say that for me, going to Berkeley after I had been teaching in the academy, I gotten my PhD, it was like receiving another PhD because I was instructed into the particulars of how these programs that today we take for granted emerge. And the tradition is very strong at Berkeley, grounded on the legacy of what the student coalition that was called the Third World Liberation Front. And the Third World Liberation Front left an indelible mark at the University, San Francisco State University, where it began the Third World Strike, and at University of California, Berkeley. And the strike resulted in the creation of Ethnic Studies Department, and later also the Africana Studies Department at the University of California, Berkeley, and the College of Ethnic Studies at San Francisco State University. And these are, for example, some images from that time of what how that mobilization and that student activism looked like. This is from about 1969. This is how the streets close to the campus of the University of California, Berkeley, looked like then. And, you know, since I had already come twice to South Africa, it did not take long. By the beginning of Rosemont's Fall, it did not take long when I came back in early 2016, fall, Rosemont's Fall and then Fismo's Fall students to reach out and for me to have the opportunity to talk to them and share some ideas about Decoloniality, Fanon, and the Third World Liberation Front. So it was another moment, another hub of exchange of ideas from both, me coming from the United States, but also being grounded in the Caribbean, and also in a place from Puerto Rico, where there was also the longest student strike in the US, or US territories took place in Puerto Rico, precisely from where I come from. And this was the subject of the dialogue with students from UCT at what they call Asania Park, where we had to convene because a number of them could not enter the university because they had been suspended. The conversation went into the night, and we were exchanging knowledge back from, you know, about the Third World Liberation Front and the Third World Strike, and then the struggle that they were pursuing and what they were pushing through. So this took place in 2016. In 2016 also, I was offering a seminar at UNISA. I came as a visiting researcher, the Department of Political Sciences, where Sandy also teaches. And these are also in the room at UNISA, in our regular room. At that time, where we were engaging the ideas of Black consciousness and decoloniality, became also like a hub at that moment. Oyoronko Yewumi was also part of in the seminar, and later on we went both invited to the Blackhouse for further discussions with Fismo's Fall students. This is back in 2016. And as you saw in these pictures, Sandy and I started to work together in early 2016 in the context of Rosemont's Fall and Fismo's Fall. And as she mentioned that Fismo's Fall and Rosemont's Fall forcefully introduced the thematic and imperative of decolonization within the South African Academy. And these are things that Sandy mentioned, but I would like to, are very relevant to both of us, and I would like to state them very clear again. We have been educated and dedicated ourselves to advance the legacy of Black conscious and decolonial struggles of previous generations in Occupy Asania and Abya-Yala. Abya-Yala is the indigenous name for the Americas. So we have been doing a crossing of knowledges across the Atlantic Ocean, Rosmus Fall and Fismus Fall were as a catalyst that offered the condition for our encounter and collaboration. And then it's important, and again, I am sort of emphasizing what Sandy said, that Rosmus Fall and Fismus Fall are not mere objects for us. They were not and are not mere objects of analysis, and we did not sought to join the sudden large list of quote-unquote specialists and experts on Rosmus Fall and Fismus Fall. Rather, we saw and we see our task as a combative one and not merely academic. While South African universities desperately engaged in mistranslations of the challenges of Rosmus Fall and Fismus Fall, we sought to build the connections from existing decolonial spaces within and outside academia, as well as from inside and outside South Africa and Africa, to develop the project of combative decoloniality that we have tentatively termed the Blackhouse paradigm of knowledge creation and epistemic and artistic change. This paradigm of knowledge simultaneously counters the coloniality of the dominant liberal paradigm of knowledge production in the academy and advances the combative decoloniality of existing collectives and projects through South-South collaborations that include but exceed the limited space of the academy. And I had the privilege of, when I was invited by the South African Academy of Sciences to share some ideas about the Blackhouse paradigm in the context of varsities, in the context of a university. And what we have been doing that in our approach, the task of decolonizing the university is to be first and foremost rooted and expressed not in the creation of new administrative positions or the production of new modules, publications, and manuals, as important, though also often ambiguous as they can be, but in the creative work of linking pedagogical, research, and artistic projects that express and advance a combative decolonial and Black consciousness within and particularly outside the academy. This implies that the decolonial university, to the extent that there could be one, and combative decoloniality in academia, would emerge from these collaborations that always already exceed the space of the liberal academy and the white academic field, and also its preferred modes of knowledge production, dissemination, and engagement. So we're really seeing what we are doing, kind of a serious effort of building from what we understood Rosmus Fall and Fismus Fall to be about, avoiding the mistranslations that are often conducted in the liberal academy, where some of the insights about decoloniality and Black consciousness are couched in liberal terms that are acceptable to the liberal structure and to the liberal order. And sometimes in these cases, it mutes and distorts some of the advances. And so we're trying to constructively build and show what can be produced when you take these ideas seriously. At the Blackhouse, youth education, and this is part of the paradigm, is part of an encompassing view of decolonization, where knowledge is reconstituted as part of the process of communicating, teaching, and learning from Black youth who are well acquainted with the harsh realities of anti-Blackness. It reflects the idea that collectivity is transversal, in the sense that it creates an environment for the encounter between an enrichment among subjects who are positioned in different spaces of the social sphere, and it's also an intergenerational space. The youth of today often perceive the contradiction and limits of a system, as well as understand the possibilities of combative action in a fresh light. They are also the university students, the scholars, and the professionals of tomorrow. Organizing a curriculum for and teaching Black youth in a profoundly anti-Black context is far more than quote-unquote service. It is one of the activities that simultaneously serves to re-educate teachers and researchers while mobilizing knowledge in combative directions. The preparation of a curriculum for youth education was part of the organization of a summer camp on Black consciousness and decoloniality for young students in Soweto of no more than 16 years of age that we worked collaboratively. In preparing the curriculum, the Blackhouse continued a view that it had already introduced in its engagement with the Fallists in 2015 and 2016. And this school took place in 2019. That it sought to connect the Black youth of today with the combative Black youth of previous generations, particularly the Black conscious youth who participated in student-led movements and uprisings in the 1970s. The Blackhouse also built on its inter and transnational scope, both Africa and the larger world, of the African diaspora, as well as the colonized world, were part of its spatial horizon. This inter and transnational approach was fundamental for the summer camp project, while rooted deeply in Africa, in South Africa, and in Soweto. There is no contradiction here between that rootedness, but also the transnational and character and the attempt at weaving different knowledges produced in different sites of the modern colonial world. And in this, the Blackhouse also participated with the Rutgers Advanced Institute for Critical Caribbean Studies in the United States. And we also collaborated in the organization of the third rencontre of the Frantz Fanon Foundation. We had also become a participant in these collaborations. And we all participated in international events entitled Fanon, Decoloniality, and the Spirit of Bandung in 2018. By the time that the idea of a summer school camp for youth emerged, the Blackhouse and the Institute of Critical Caribbean Studies that I was directing in the US had already developed important connections. I was a co-founding member as well as a faculty of the Institute at the university where I taught in the United States. And after my return from South Africa, in my stay, I conceived of my role at my university and at the Institute differently. And so the Blackhouse and working at the Blackhouse had shown me possibilities of combative activity at the intersection of grassroots knowledge formation and higher education, combined with attention to local, regional, and global concerns, as well as respect for the ancestors. All of this was reflected in the organization of a multi-layer set of activities in 2018 that culminated with the third rencontre of the Frantz Fanon Foundation, hosted by the Rutgers Advanced Institute of Critical Caribbean Studies, and whose main theme was Frantz Fanon, Decoloniality, and the Spirit of Bandung. The Blackhouse was one of the principal organizations whose work was featured in the third rencontre. The rencontre involved the collaboration between an academic space, the Institute, a non-academic international space, the Frantz Fanon Foundation, and a community organization in New Brunswick, where my university is located my former university is located in the United States. The organization is called Lazos America Unida. It's mainly Mexican-American and led by Mexican-American women of indigenous descent. Since Lazos America Unida, this organization focuses on areas such as health and youth education. The Rencontre, the international event, prioritized the themes of healing and education in the program. In this effort to combine the questions and interests that emerge in the colonial and anti-racist community organizations with scholarly work and research in related areas, I was following the lead of the Blackhouse. If my experience at the Blackhouse in 2016 was fundamental for my work in the events of 2018, the activities of 2018 including the participation of the Blackhouse in the third rencontre, proved important for the organization of the summer camp for youth, and my visit to South African universities as distinguished visiting scholar in 2019. All these crossings and collaborations inform the idea of the Blackhouse paradigm that provides crucial considerations in any project that seeks to decolonize the university. At the Blackhouse, Black consciousness, Pan-Africanism, and decoloniality, those three areas, bodies of work, combine in a combative, transdisciplinary, grounded in place, as well as transnational form that pays attention to the specificities of coloniality and anti-Blackness in South Africa and the African continent, while acknowledging and building on the contributions of the African diaspora and the global South for the conceptualization, imagination, and practice of decoloniality in our present and our future. The paradigm is one of permanent linking, weaving, and organizing across multiple sites and moments of Black conscious and Pan-African community-based, institutional, and action-oriented epistemic and artistic projects. The Blackhouse collective paradigm counters the dominant liberal and neoliberal modes of producing knowledge at the university and offers a possibility for maintaining the spirit and practice of combative decoloniality alive in projects for decolonizing the university. And these are some pictures of the event that we all participated together. This took place in the United States. So, some of the activities have taken place here, some of the activities have taken place there. And this was the event in 2019, Fanon, Decoloniality, and the Spirit of Bandung. This is Teresa Vivar, who is there with me, who is the executive director of Lazos América Unida, the community organization I was talking about before, from which we took the themes of healing and education as the main themes for the conference. This is an activity in the community that we organized with. These are members of the umbrella organization Decolonize This Place from New York City. He's on this presentation. Louis Gordon was with us, graced us with his presence there as well, both as musician and speaker. We also took visitors to town, to the artwork in the community that is linked to the struggle against gentrification. And we also published a special issue in a peer-reviewed journal, and both Mireille Fanon-Méndez-France, who is the co-chair of the Fanon Foundation, and Sandy Khadebe are also co-editors among myself and Annabelle Wee, who is now a professor at Northwestern University. The Blackhouse collective paradigm connects Pan-Africanism, as I was saying before, Black consciousness and decoloniality, as well as children, youth, community-based, and university forms of learning and research. Some of this became patent in the summer school camp that I mentioned previously. I wanted to show you the initial pages of the program for the camp, and to leave you with one of its members who is now a student at UCT. But before I pass the microphone to our sister Putimelo Jame, let me read you one short paragraph from the program for the camp. The summer school camp aims to introduce young people to a conversation on decoloniality by distilling decolonial thought from Black consciousness and Pan-Africanist thoughts. In Sobuque's parlance, the purpose of the camp is to help learners and education make sense of education as a tool by which we enjoin ourselves to our people and to be of service, to raise our desires above those capped by varied plantation frameworks and colonial cognitive maps. A beautiful formulation from our comrades at the Blackhouse. The Black conscious lens, taking instruction from this formulation by Biko, quote, Black culture above all implies freedom on our part to innovate without recourse to white value, close quote. Help us reimagine better schools for decolonized education, and also to reimagine better research and better universities, I would add. And with that, I'm going to leave it to our sister Buitumelo.
Thank you, Prof. Can you guys hear me?
We can.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
All
yes.
Right. I attended the Blackhouse Collective Summer Decoloniality Camp in 2019, where we studied the SASO Manifesto, that is also known as the South African Students Organization Manifesto, right? I think it's very important that scholars not try to separate decoloniality with Black consciousness and Pan-Africanism, which is what we see currently in 2022, right? So when we were engaging with, so organizations such as the Blackhouse are very important because they're doing groundwork in the community. I remember in the summer camp, we had students from Musi High, which is a high school based in Soweto. So we studied the SASO Manifesto, as I've stated, and the students, as we were studying it, we had to sort of like observe and also voice what we would like to change, what we would like to add and amend and adopt. So I'll just take you guys through that. So one of the things that the students, or what we wanted to adopt, is that the SASO, right, students believed that the concept of integration can never be realized in an atmosphere of subsession and mistrust. Integration does not mean the integration does not mean an assimilation of Blacks into an already established set of norms drawn up and motivated by the white society. Integration implies free participation by individuals in a given society and proportionate contribution to the joint culture of the society by all constituent groups, which basically means that Black people, integration should not be a tool used against Black people when they want to speak up in order to silence them, but rather a tool to empower Black people, right? So that Black people can participate in a society that represents them, right? And also the students, and also the SASO manifesto also continues to say that that we believe that in all matters relating to the struggles and Blacks realizing their aspirations, whites must be excluded, and it also says that the white man must be made aware that one is either part of the solution and part of the problem. And I remember this caused a debate around us because other people felt like what the SASO students were basically saying that yes, we can integrate with white people, but also in our quest to humanity, we should also we should also integrate them in some way to see, and others voice that whether even if white people integrate with us, their skin will always make them, to be in an advantage rather than us, So pretty much that was it. We just spoke about the SASO manifesto. I don't have time anymore. Yeah, thank you.
My teachers of humanity have been this earth and its waters. I have met a humanity that we dream about at the sight of the ocean. Its abundance and grandeur flowing with ease and moving all the seas in me. Its ambient noise whispering that we are enough. Its ambient noise whispering that we are enough and are in rhythm with its movement. I have met our humanity in people's rituals with water. The surfers riding the waves and the Zionist church members praying in tongues in depth as the sun rays caresses the water in the early hours of the morning. The ocean teaches me that abundance and depth of love exists even in this scarcity culture, when it kisses the shore, only to be surrendered to being pulled back to its center. The ocean with its clear waters that reflect the blue and gray skies are gentle reminders that we are each other's reflection as we figure out this journey of life on this earth with all these injustices. This earth rotates on its axis day and night while we move on it, held upright by gravity. Our bodies and spines know at its core the warmth and assurance of being held upright by gravity, to jump up and down, only to land firm on the ground, to rise and fall. The trees stand still, rooted to the ground, while leaves and branches dance to the howling wind. Stillness and movement is this earth's offering to us as we maneuver this pandemic. The intricacy and
Hello again, everyone. It looks like we might have lost Ongezwa. You back, Ongezwa? Sorry, you froze for a moment, so I'll step out again.
When you feel lost, walk this earth and you will see the shades of your skin on the various colors of this earth. You will find this yourself on this earth as it nurtures you into being. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sister Ongezwa, yet again for those powerful words. We really appreciate that you are still with us. We're very aware that we have gone beyond the scheduled time, but the presenters have all kindly agreed to stay with us. So if you have any questions or comments, they're certainly very open to engaging with you. Presenters, everyone, I see in the chat appreciation for your powerful and importantly collective presentation. And as we watch the chat, I'm wondering if there are any final comments from any of you. Could I ask you, those of you who can, to switch on your cameras, Zandi? I know that you're not able to, Aya. Bali, I know that you're not able to. Zandi, I see you now. Utamelo, I'm not sure if you can. Switch on your camera. Thank you. Any final comments from you, Zandi? You're muted.
Thank you, Sernas. I think I've spoken so much that I would really want to hear what others, have to share their reflections on what was offered this evening.
Thank you.
Maybe while maybe we get some comments or questions. One point that for me has been very important to see is how the Blackhouse and our collaboration is trying to address both education before and research and knowledge production and artistic production as I was saying, children and youth before they enter into the university. And this, Sandy can speak largely to how the Blackhouse has been so keen into training youth so that they are better prepared to be at the university, but then at the same time, we're working on the models and forms of engagement that I think are really express the colonial knowledge formation at the university, because both Sandy and myself teach and do research at the university too. So we're trying to work at the different levels at the same time, and then get them to inform each other, right? So the community work, the youth education work, that informs the paradigm that we're going to be using, and the ideas and the theorizing that we use when we engage certain ideas on, Black consciousness and Pan-Africanism, and vice versa. And I think this is actually something that was also happening in previous moments, movements like the Black consciousness movement, and it was also through the Third World Liberation Front, when the students were doing both, and they were teaching to community, they were creating new forms of education, and they were calling for and engaging in forms of knowledge production and collaboration that was defying the paradigms of the liberal university. And of course, we have our ancestors who did this kind of work, like Fanon, for example, that we have cited, many of whom did their work outside the university or in conversation with sources that were not considered to be sanctioned at that moment by the university. And so we see ourselves, I think, continuing that line of combativity having to do with creating connections and building community and crossing different knowledges and inventing in that area across multiple spheres. And maybe, Sandy, if there is anything that you can speak to that, that's something, one of the elements that I have considered most importantly in what we have been doing.
Yes, thank you, Prof. I think that's, I'm still muted. No, I think, am I audible now? Okay. Thank you, Prof. I think, yeah, that is a very important, I think, intervention from the Blackhouse Collective, you know, for many reasons, particularly because, you know, young people who enter university, even though they've had most of their schooling within what we call post 94 South Africa, when they enter the university, they enter it at a disadvantaged position epistemically, because the university, even in spite or despite the intervention by the Fees Must Fall movement, continues to be hostile, continues to agitate against, you know, epistemic justice. And so if a student enters the humanities in particular at first year level without the awareness or the consciousness in terms of how the university space, you know, is structured and the dominant culture in that space, that student is at the risk of, you know, encountering racial violence, but not having, you know, the conceptual tools to deal with it. In the beginning of the year, I think around April, we had the Stellenbosch student case whereby, you know, a young white male decided to urinate in one of the Black students' room. And as the conversation was going in the media, there was a point where the student was, you know, even without the white student apologizing or even making an attempt to acknowledge that his actions was wrong, his Black counterpart, the victim, was already, you know, talking about questions of forgiveness, you know, and which is, I think, consistent with the South African logic of doing politics and racism. But students who come from the Blackhouse tradition and SYP tradition would have come to that moment differently. They wouldn't lead with the question of, you know, forgiveness and reconciliation, but justice. And that particular student, you know, would have benefited a lot. I'm not saying it would have prevented the incident, but just having different tools of, you know, understanding racism when you encounter it in the textbooks, in the lecture halls, and just finding your way and navigating through these westernized universities, because we are yet to have an African university in this country. So I think the projects that bring in young people are also important, you know, for that particular purpose. I see there's a question. Okay, let me not be the facilitator here, Shanaz. Let me leave it to you. Shanaz, you are still muted.
How about now?
We hear you.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Zandi. I was saying that precisely because of what we've heard this evening, you know, we have questions, at least one question, and I know there might be others behind this one, that the question about the kinds of possibilities that exist to enlarge what the Blackhouse paradigm embodies and represents, and to extend it. And obviously you're talking about critical forms of praxis and thought that link directly, very directly, to some of the illustrations that you have just shared with us. And this really is a question, I think, for everyone. And as you think about that, we'll consider the second question that, or comment really, that has been posted in the chat. Thank you.
Thanks, Shanaz.
Maybe there is something that I can say about the question that regarding the possibilities that exist, because I want to recognize the work that our sisters UKZN have done in the organization of the recent Decoloniality Winter School, the first Decoloniality Winter School that we had. And our sister Sajida Seder in particular, but also the work of the Center for Critical Research on Race and Identity. And as well as, of course, at the institute that is hosting this event, which is the Institute for Social and Health Sciences at UNISA. So these are sites in the South African Academy that have been kind of supporting the kind of work that we have been doing, and also opening venues so that we can share with others and learn from others how to continue elaborating this Blackhouse paradigm, and also how to really try to foster a combative, decolonial way of thinking linked to the colonial praxis, right? And we think that that's important because in the, the part of the mistranslations and commodifications of the university of terms like decoloniality, what ends up happening is that then decoloniality becomes simply with a matter of intellectual debates, right? Or scholarly publications, or the question of progress through certain form of accreditation, right? And for us, those things have their relative place, but the fundamental of decoloniality within Black consciousness and Pan-Africanism is in the generation of interrelated knowledges that come together for the liberation of our communities and for the emancipation and decolonization of South Africa, Africa, and the colonized peoples over the world. And so there is something that we need to kind of continue exploring the ways of doing that and avoiding this commodification that we're finding increasingly in the academy, as many people learn the lingo of decoloniality and they turn it into a thematic, in a research thematic, or a question as if it was a method to be applied instead of a praxis to be lived with others, and an engagement, in large part intellectual, but also political engagement, to be sure, and ethical, I think. And so these schools that we have had, and that's where Sandy and I met each other, for example, they have served as points of contacts, right? In the best case scenario, they are point of contact for mutual learning and collaborations, right? Nothing else. And what happens through them is what is important. So Sandy, you disappeared from view, but I wanted to see maybe you have something, you have participated in these schools, and the Blackhouse took a prominent role in the organization of the most recent school. And so maybe if you could talk maybe about that, how you see that as a site of opportunities to further explore with others this notion of combative decoloniality and the Blackhouse paradigm.
Yes, thank Prof. I think in many ways, collaborations should not just be, the ideas. They should be, expressed as we walk, in terms of the praxis. And so when we talk about, expanding Blackhouse Collective to other spaces, we should meet in the picket line, we should meet in the site of struggle, we should meet in these lecture halls that are organizing, to teach and to share ideas around decoloniality. And then from there, we move into not only, collaborating, but also understanding how, each society or each space, is located in the whole post-1994 crisis. And when we talk about collaboration, we don't mean it in terms of people who ideologically identify with decoloniality, but with people who are willing to get their hands dirty and do the work without necessarily, imposing hierarchies. Because a lot of the time, and in my experience, the people who articulate decoloniality on paper and in publications are not always willing to be combative in terms of going down to do the work. People have sought to even find the language to say that, writing and thinking is activism and it's sufficient. And we say that, you need to be engaged in a praxis with other people, not just, the ideas in your head. And Cabral, teaches us that people don't want only what is in our heads, but they want us to be present where they are and to think with them and not for them. So these are some of the things that we need to be open to struggle against and struggle with one another if we want to meaningfully, reach spaces of collaboration. And I don't know if we should go to the other question, Saj.
Yes, Sandy, I think it's an important one.
Okay. Yes, it's a very important question, and it speaks to, I think, where we found ourselves as Black youth in the post-1994 moment. I mean, when we were rising into consciousness, Azapo was not there, for an example. And so we could not see or identify it as a home. But in terms of what, the person terms the Sankofa, or the Sankara rather, the Sankofa and the Sankara dialectical. The Sankofa dialectical is going back to fetch that which, has been erased, that which has been discarded through coloniality, and, making it relevant to answer questions of the now. This is what the Blackhouse Collective did through by drawing from the Sasso BC tradition and archive to try and make sense of the post-1994 moment. And if you think about what happened in post-1994 and where Azapo places itself, in many ways, it has, I think, it has not created a sustained critique of the 1994 project, because, I mean, we see them in Parliament and their discourse has not been, critical of the Mandelaization of South African politics. And so it is disappointing that, Biko's movement, one movement that is identified as Biko's movement, is not there when we are searching for Black consciousness, and we find ourselves having to, go directly to history to find answers to these questions. So I think it's a very important question to also try to hold both ends of the sky, the Sankofa dialectical as well as the Black consciousness BPC tradition of community activism, community praxis, in order to, not only make sense of what we're going through, but to imagine a possibility where we can call our souls our own.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that, Sandy. I am looking at the time, so I'm going to suggest that we begin to bring this to a close, but not before I highlight a comment that was posted by Haile Matutu, which I think is really important. The point being that what we have heard tonight and what we have seen tonight is an exemplification not just of the content of combative decoloniality, but equally of process. And Haile says, Comrade Nelson, thank you for decolonizing the public lecture format. We now have precedents. We have certainly seen how comrades from different sites of struggle, but converging sites of struggle and geographies and spaces have come together to enlarge the project of decoloniality, deepen it, and certainly work in ways that are extremely inspiring. So to all of you who shared with us this evening, thank you so very much. Certainly from the Institute for Social and Health Sciences, deep gratitude for your sharings today. Thank you everyone for staying. Thank you for your presence, and good night from Azania, and may the love song continue to play on.